Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. Today I have with me Shaun O'Gorman. Shaun is a leadership coach, director of the Strong Life Project and podcast host of the Strong Life Project. He's a former QPS police officer of 13 years, has spent 15 plus years in the corporate sector and is very passionate about bringing awareness and support to PTSD, depression and suicide. Particularly but not exclusively in the areas of first responders, emergency services and military. Shaun also has a focus on the importance of leadership and a straight up no bullshit way of communicating. So I'm super happy and super excited to have you here talking with me today, Shaun. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Jess. My absolute pleasure. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. First, I wanted to start off with, because you talk a lot about leadership on your podcast. I love that you have like these little micro kind of episodes that are easy to absorb and just get the juiciness of. But you talk a lot about leadership, and you do a lot of work in leadership in the work that you do as a coach and as a speaker and all of that. So what is it about leadership that is important to you?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing that's important to me in leadership and teaching leadership and in myself or whatever, and it's not just in a corporate sense, it's in life, right? Because you can either be a passenger in your life or you can be a leader in your life. For me, as a dad, as a partner in business, whatever. But it's that emotional connectedness. It's actually giving a shit about people, caring about people, makes you a great leader. And I think it's very basic. I think it's very simple, but I think it's probably the one thing that's missed all too often. People don't have the emotional connection and caring for the people they're trying to lead.
Yeah, I found that, and this is part of like what spurred my mission, is like we are human and we are allowed to, come to work as humans. It's the whole idea of like, leave your problems at the door. It's like, there is an element, yes, of show up to work and, do what you can, but also we're not robots. So why treat people like that?
And if I've got a whole idea that I go, if you care about the people, like any business, you look at any business there is in the world, it's about people. Even if you're in robotics, people build robots, so everything in your world is about people. So it doesn't matter what the thing is you're selling or delivering or doing, people do that thing. So if you care about people and you look after people, the rest of it takes care of itself. But I think we're focused in the opposite sense. And leaving your problems at home doesn't work because nobody can do it. So therefore you have that, that anchor's dragging along behind you potentially. If you're a good leader, you want your people to come to you and talk to you about things that don't work anywhere in their life, help them get it sorted. And at the end of the day for your business or whatever, it's a better result. Like the more you help people, the more beneficial it is to you. You're not losing, you're gaining so much. Yeah,
it's funny. I actually did a video that's saying that exact same thing that's coming out. It was going to be today, but now it's next week. It was coming about like when we help people, we actually help ourselves.
Absolutely.
It depends on which position you're in as to what that looks like. But there is this element. It can be a learning opportunity. It can actually give people the energy to be able to then turn around and do their job properly, or there's more efficiency and productivity in it. Like there's so much to be gained from just helping people rather than shutting them down.
Absolutely. And it's like it's a basic human condition. We love emotional connection. That's what we thrive on as animals, as humans. So you go, well, if you're going to help other people, then you learn the lessons yourself. And, I often get a lot of very positive feedback. People go, oh, well, you help so many people. You're very selfless and that's amazing. And I'm like, no, I think I'm one of the most selfish people on the planet because every minute of what I do for other people, I get that same advantage. As I'm talking to someone, I'm working through their problems or teaching them about leadership or whatever, I'm getting that benefit. So the more I help people, the more beneficial it is to me in the sense of my own development. Like it's a no-brainer really, but I just think a lot of people they're fearful of vulnerability. So therefore they're fearful of the emotional connection.
Yes, that is a big one. There's two big ones there. I'd like to and I spoke about this as well, I'd like to frame our idea of what the word selfishness means, because I think the fear of being selfish. So when we talk about how we can get so much out of helping people for ourselves, people are like, well, isn't that selfish? It's like, yeah, but why is that a bad thing all the time? Like it depends on whether it's with a malicious intent or not. Like selfishness can actually be really kind in its own right. But you're definitely right about vulnerability as well. There's such a fear of and I find in workplaces in the corporate sector as well, there's such a fear of what happens if I connect a little more humanly to that person and
Yeah.
communicate on a like more of a human level? What does that then mean? And the people, I never really understood the whole mindset around like not wanting to develop friendships with people that you work with.
Yeah.
Why we spend a ridiculous amount of our lives at work. Why
Yeah.
would you not? Like, what is why? Like,
And
yeah.
it's that whole, and there's so many complexities in it that I think even in more recent times, there's that whole fear of connection, male to female. There's a whole fear of what's appropriate, what's not, who's going to get offended. This attitude of outrage we live in that I think is just crazy.
Yeah.
Instead of this, if you're actually just living in that real true sense of being a decent person. Now, obviously, there's some less than amazing people who have been, just sexual predators that have come out through the Me Too movement or all sorts of things. And as a father of two daughters, I think that's amazing.
Mm.
But it has us fearful, and I think especially a lot of men are fearful of being emotionally connected and nurturing now, and being connected to women because we feel like there's, oh no, what if that's misread? No, but if you're actually coming from a place of real vulnerability and connection, then it very rarely can be. And even if it is, if you go, oh, if you and I have a conversation, Jess, and I say something, I go, oh, sorry, I hope you didn't take that the wrong way. I didn't mean that sexual. I didn't mean that in such a way. That's again vulnerability. Like we've lost the art of communication. Everybody locks themselves in their box and goes, oh, this is safe. But there's no safety in it because we're not connected.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more safety, and you hit the nail on the head. Like I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, well, what is the solution to that? And then you answered the question. Like it was like, it is vulnerability, which
Yeah,
is something that I love talking about anyway in communication. And I think communication requires a lot of vulnerability because
absolutely.
we don't know how the other person is going to respond, even in what may be the most safest of sort of settings. Like it doesn't have to be about like asking someone out on a date, that kind of level of vulnerability, but it
Sure.
could just be about like, if you were to ask a certain question in a certain way, you don't know if opening up that kind of conversation with another person will be welcomed or not. You don't know how they'll
Yeah.
respond, or you don't know if they'll think that you're weird because you want to talk about this thing over here. Like it's just, there is a lot of vulnerability in communication, and I think um, the sharing of, even like you said, of going that step further and saying, oh, I hope you didn't take it the wrong way,
Yeah.
and kind of calling it for what it is very scary for people too.
And it's a vulnerability to me. Like I learned this lesson uh, a number of years ago, but 3 years ago when I've written a book called My Dark Companion about my story and through policing PTSD and recovery and everything. And when I got my first copy of the book, a very long story short, I took a photo of it because I was terrified of the vulnerability. Like it's got my deepest, darkest secrets in it. All the things I never told anyone for years.
Oh
So I was
yeah.
like, holy shit, like what have I done? Took a photo, put it on Facebook, as you do, and I got so much positive feedback from that. And the level of freedom, that was 3 years ago this month, and the
Mm.
level of freedom that's come from that, I just don't care what people think anymore because all of my deepest secrets about I was a pretty arrogant guy, I was quite, I was pretty angry, I drank a lot, I was, you know, just a typical young arrogant cop or man, I think in my 20s with women where I thought I was pretty cool and it was all covering insecurity and bullshit.
Yeah.
All of these things that occurred, I look back now and I go, I was so scared of being judged for so much I had thought I'd done wrong, which in hindsight is just learning and growing up. Now I don't care. And I go, anybody could come at me with anything in my life and go, oh, but you did this. And I go, yeah, that's in my book or that's in my podcast or that's wherever.
Yeah.
And I find people often, especially people close to me, I've got a young woman, a woman your age who's 29, who's like a daughter to me. And I met her about 6 years ago. And a mutual contact of ours, Nick, same thing. I met her about 18 months ago. And both of those young women I spoke to, just connected with in different means, one through training, one through a mutual friend. And they both don't have father figures in their life. And I don't see my daughters as much as I want because of divorce. I see them every second weekend. And I actually said to both these young women, I said, listen, I'm old enough to be your dad. And I'm happy to have that relationship. And we really do. And I go, so the first conversation I had in that with them was, hey, listen, this isn't some weird sexual thing. There's not a sexual advance. I'm not trying to sleep with you. This is actually, I just really see an opportunity for me to be able to help you. And they're like, oh, cool. So I don't. leave that unsaid because it sounds weird. Like, it does sound strange. I
Yeah.
go, as if that's, me at, 50 now, and they're both 29 and 30, at the ages I met them at, if I'm 45 and they're 25, of course there's going to be an element of them like, what's this guy want?
Mm.
So straight up, I just go, hey, this isn't some weird sexual thing. I actually just think you're a really good person and we get on well, and, I'm happy to be someone you can depend on and get advice from. And both of those relationships are amazing. One of those girls' daughter is my goddaughter, and it's been beautiful. I was in the bridal party for their wedding, made the speech for their wedding. Like, it's been amazing. But
Yeah.
it was only that willingness to be vulnerable that I have that amazing relationships. Otherwise, I could be like most people who are sitting back going, I don't see my kids and this sucks and it's not fair. I'm like, well, go and create other things through vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and um, what do you find that when people respond when you show up with that level of vulnerability, even if it is a weird sort
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
you're like, oh, this isn't like anything sexual or anything, but even if it goes to that level and you do show up and just call it as it is, or call it what it's not in this case,
Yep.
how do you find that they respond? Is there an element of like shoulders dropping, kind of relaxing, going, oh, okay, yeah,
Absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely. Because you're essentially, I think the biggest issue we have in communication and leadership in relationships and whatever
Mm.
is the unsaid. The
Yeah.
things that are unsaid, and then we try to work out what it is. So if you and I are here having a conversation and I'm like, I'm not sure what Jess means by that. And I
Yeah.
don't say, hey, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Can you like give me a bit more context or whatever? Then in my mind, I make this all up. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, does she hate me? Does she think I'm a goose? Does she think this? And invariably it's negative. Not very often, most people don't, over presume in a positive sense.
Not usually.
And it all comes back to we're just scared what other people think. But
Mm.
if you can get to a level of self-awareness and self-confidence, which I have after many years, where I honestly, I'm always very careful how I say this because it sounds pretty arrogant, but I really don't give a shit what people think.
Mm.
My opinion of me is the most important. But with that, I'm also my harshest critic. So I'm very aware of who I am and how I interact. And even I'm very confident. Someone said to me recently, wow, you're uber confident. I was like, is that a compliment? And wasn't sure if it was. But no, I've had some people, and I have people around me who I love implicitly and I trust implicitly, like those girls, or like my daughters, my partner, who will say, hey, you're getting a bit ahead of yourself, or you sound like an egomaniac or whatever. And that's never happened so far, touch wood. But I'm aware that the conversations I have with people, when I'm being really vulnerable and open, and all the work I've done on myself, you got to be careful, because I may have done, I've done 18 years or whatever of personal development work, and someone may be on their first step of that process. So you got to be careful how you relate. But if you're just open and honest and loving and caring and vulnerable, people love it. We all want emotional connection, but we're all terrified to drop the wall first to do that, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And it's true, because if we chose to meet each other in that vulnerable, kind, caring, loving space, as opposed to, I hate the whole term of like, like they're out of my league, like in whatever
Yeah.
context. It's like, well, no, actually, it's just,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to the CEO how I talk to my workmate over here, like, which is kind, respectful,
Yeah.
but like friendly, and creating a genuine rapport, rather than something that isn't real and isn't genuine and doesn't create that connection because of why hierarchy. Like, it's just,
Absolutely. When it comes down to a leadership perspective, I think there's two very clear delineations.
mm,
And one is you must have respect for the office, and the office of CEO, supervisor, manager, police officer, whatever.
yeah,
And even to me, I go the office of mum or dad, or husband or wife, or partner, or whatever. But then you judge the person on their behavior as to the respect for the individual. So what I mean by that is, if you have a boss who's a bit of an asshole, then you're not going to give them the same level of respect, connection, vulnerability, and openness that you will a boss who's a really loving, connected, emotionally, aware person. And that's fine. But there still needs to be a level of respect for their position.
yeah,
But the problem that I think is the people that want that I'm the boss, so you've got to call me, Mr. O'Gorman. If you call me Mr. O'Gorman, I'm looking for my dad. Like, ridiculous. But the people who need that are the ones that don't have the emotional awareness, aren't good leaders. They're the bosses. And bosses suck because they don't care. They're not emotionally connected. Leaders go, hey, Jess, call me Shaun. What do you like? This is crazy. We're just people, because they're secure enough in themselves.
Yeah.
The insecurity piece that people have, if you're somebody in a very high position, perceived position in a company or a business, and people are scared of you, well, you're an idiot, because you're not getting the best out of your people. And the only reason you need that is because of your own lack of self-worth and confidence, that you think you need to get that external validation. Like, it's pretty basic stuff.
Mm. I love this conversation so much. It's making me so happy. It's just like communication and leadership, it does come to vulnerability, and it does come down to how we connect. And there is that element that is that key piece in leadership, which is actually connecting. And you're right, like not everyone like I think Brene Brown talks about it, like not everyone earns your vulnerability. They don't earn your story necessarily,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't mean you still can't show up and
Yeah.
on that level still be a certain way of vulnerable and open and all of that.
Definitely. Gary Vaynerchuk, who
Mm.
I'm sure you've heard of, Gary V, like, who I love, he talks about, like the pyramid that has the boss at the top and the people down. He goes, flip it upside down. If you're the boss or you're the leader, you should be working for the people,
Yes.
working for your staff. And I go, absolutely.
Mm.
It's like, my dad was a policeman for 42 years. And when I was a young cop, he was like reasonably senior in the police. And still today, he's been retired 15 years or something. I get police that I deal with in my work, or I see or whatever, go, oh, how's your dad? He's amazing. He's a legend.
Mm.
Because he really cared. Him and I had challenges, father and son. It was a different thing in that, because in that environment, he was more challenged emotionally. And in the leadership environment, he was so open and such a great guy, just cared that he would be the first one through the door. He would be the one that led from the front. He would, he wouldn't expect you to do a thing he wouldn't do. So people literally would walk into burning buildings for him. Now, there's plenty of other people I met in the police and in corporate that I go, I wouldn't walk across the street for you, let alone put my life in danger, because you don't care. And I think it's just a simple thing. If you want to be, I talk a lot about emotional connection for men, because I just think we are hopeless. Men are freaking hopeless at emotional connection. We are hopeless at vulnerability. It's all about being a tough guy. And whenever I ask men or women, describe an alpha male, they go, oh, a tough guy who's unemotional and doesn't care. I'm like, that's the opposite of what an alpha male is. Like, an
Yeah.
alpha male should be loving, caring, connected. And also, I call it my 95-5 alpha male rule for men. 95% of the time, you're loving, caring, connected, vulnerable. 5% of the time, you will enact, extreme physical violence if you have to protect
For the
other
warrior.
people.
Yeah.
That's what men should be.
Yep.
And it's that, it just does my head in, because I just think it's, again, so simple. And that's who we're born to be.
Mm.
Men and women, whatever gender you identify as, wherever you live in the world, whatever your background, we're all born as animals. So as little kids, as babies, we are a blank slate. We get programmed with all this insecurity and bullshit. Like, we're not born with it. So it's all about nurturing. It's all about environment. I go, what if we actually start raising our kids to be emotionally connected and loving and vulnerable? Like, my daughters, I tell them I love them all the time. And even when I haven't seen them for 8 weeks through COVID, with some decisions their mum made that I disagreed with, but I'm still texting them all the time. I get hardly any response because they're 12 and 15.
Yeah.
But I go, hey, I love you more than anything. I send them gifts of, big puppies going, I love you, whatever. And they, when I talk to them about it at different times, I'll go, do you get my text? They go, yeah. I go, so why don't you respond? They go, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, I can stop sending them. And they go, no, don't do that. I go, exactly.
Because I love it.
Yeah, they love it. They're not going to tell me for whatever reason, and that's cool. But I go, my job as their dad is to be extremely loving, connected, and open and vulnerable. It's not their job to be that to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, leadership. Like, and a 50-year-old Anglo-Saxon male in Australia, we've got a lot to answer for, because it's a lot of, it's that the whole, the patriarchy we talk about, toxic masculinity, blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of it's blown out of proportion, but it's also very true. Men have been so disconnected for so long and have unfortunately been focused on the wrong things. We've got a whole lot of stuff in society we've got to unwind, and we should be the ones talking about it. Domestic violence, all those things. Men should be leading it, but they don't. And I think that's what leadership's about.
Yeah. Ah, that's so refreshing. But it's true. It's just like, it's also like leading by example. So,
Absolutely.
when you show up that way with your daughters, and I know that you have a podcast episode on this about like showing up and being the men that you'd want your daughter to date, like, by the way, but like showing up and leading by example, so then they learn what it's like to actually be loved, like, and what that means and what that pure love is. But also when it comes to men, is it does need to be men talking about these things and kind of leading the charge on these things. And it's not because it's their fault as such, and it's not, and it's not because it's one group's problem over another. It's just because it's leading by example, and the more that show up, the more that there is this unwritten kind of permission to continue, like, to others to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did a talk at there was that domestic violence homicide at Camp Hill a few months ago, and where the husband murdered the wife and 3 kids, and it was horrific.
Oh yeah.
And like, it was so tragic. And I used to live in that street by just ironically a couple of houses down from where that happened 10 years ago. And someone I know organised just a men's night at the local bowls club, and 50 guys turned up. And I went there and said, look, I'm happy to talk if you want. He goes, that'd be great. Like, he asked me to. So I just stood up there for 15 minutes and I said, listen, and I don't really prep a lot of the stuff I do like that. And I said, we just have to, excuse my analogy, I said, we've just got to grow some balls and stand up as men. I said, because this is bullshit. I said, we as a society have let all 5 of those people down, certainly the mum and the 3 kids, but also that father. Because for some reason, however he got to the point he got to, and I by no means condone his behaviour, of course, didn't feel like there was anyone he could turn to or help or whatever. You don't get to that point of that action if you're okay mentally and emotionally.
There was no other choice for him.
Exactly. Now, and I stood up and I spoke, and afterwards I said, why is it? And I said, I had never considered it until that incident. And in the middle of me talking to these men, I just said, why is it that certainly 99% of people I see stand up and talk about domestic violence are women? And I said, that's just not right. Like, absolutely women should be talking about it, but men should be talking about it. Men like me should stand up and go, the fuck do you think you're doing? Like, who do you think you are? Excuse me, but you think it's your right to be physically violent to your partner or and whatever gender they are, whatever the makeup of your relationship is, your children. Because the sad part, and when there is, obviously it's about 75% of domestic violence perpetrators are male. And I go, so if that's the case, if you've got men at a stage where their lack of respect for women, or whatever the complicating factor is that has them think that to hit a woman's okay, and it's one of my most putrid hatreds in the world is men who hurt women or kids. Like, it just really fires me up. I go, if you're that sort of man, then we can have 1,000 women stand up and say it's not okay, and you're not going to listen, because unfortunately you don't have respect for those people.
Yeah.
But if I stand up, or other men stand up and go, hey mate, if I see you speak to your partner at a barbecue disrespectfully, I'm going to pull you aside and go, mate, that's not okay. If like, God forbid, I'm jogging along, going for a run one day, and this happened to me a number of times, well, a lot of years ago now, but I was jogging along, and twice in 1 week I saw guys assaulting their partners. And those guys, and then I ended up in fistfights with these men, and quite willingly so, because I'm like, if you're going to do that, mate, then there needs to be an accountability. Now, the guy I am now, I wouldn't have been as aggressive, but I would certainly be like, no, like, absolutely not. Are you joking? And then if they get aggressive, I go, okay, if you want to throw them, let's throw them, but this is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's
leadership. And that's leadership. It's easy to see it in a DV instance, right? Where you go, men need to stand up. If you're at a barbecue, if I'm at a barbecue and you were there with your partner, and he goes, and I mean, I'm comfortable saying stuff like this, and he goes, Jess, what are you doing? Like, shut up and get me another beer, whatever. I'll be like, and your reaction is beautiful because I love it, because it's like I need to step in, you'd handle it fine. But I should be going, hey, champ, no, like that is absolutely not all right. But we're scared to, because we're scared of what people will think. We're scared of all those things again, and we're back to the same conversation. We're scared to stand up for what we believe in. We're scared to be emotionally connected. We're scared to be impactful. So we all sit back like scared little rabbits and wait for someone else to do something. And hence we get to a point where we've got a society that's so disconnected and simple.
It makes you wonder, like, because if men are so scared of that, and then women have their own things around remaining small and not taking up space, like we're all got, like, there's the same issues, like really on both sides. It's just
Absolutely.
about different things. So
We're essentially all cowards, right? Like really, we're all cowards. And I look now and I go, I've been shot at and people are trying to stab me and different things in the police, and people would perceive that as brave. But I was just doing my job and I loved it. And at the time I was in my 20s, early 30s. I just had no concept of my own safety. I was just young, dumb and stupid.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And I would still be that guy now. It's just some sort of, deformity in my brain, the way I think. But it takes far more courage for me I've got a 14-year-old girl who I've been helping recently, who's been going through some significant challenges. I won't get into details, obviously, and she's been self-harming. And she's a beautiful kid. And I met her once for 2 hours with her mum. I didn't know her. I met the mum through a keynote speech I did. And I just went and had dinner with the mum and her 2 daughters. And they're a year younger than my girl. So like it's impactful for me. And this beautiful young girl, and I'd spoken to her that day. And I don't think I'd even spoken to her again. And she rang me and said, look, I'm going through this. And we had this conversation. And I said to her, hun, this might sound really weird. I said, as a 50-year-old man to a 14-year-old girl, most people may even think this is a bit inappropriate. I said, but I love you, hun, and I want to help you as much as I can, because I know what it's like to be your age and really struggle with things. And I had my challenges. And I said, it's this, and this is how we can handle it. And I helped her with it and she told her mum. It was all, she's great, in a really good place. I go, I was really lucky in that, because it was a serious freaking thing. And the self-harming was covering up suicidal ideation. She had a whole lot of stress and different things in her life out of a particular family scenario. And I'm like, if I don't actually show up as my freaking best, this kid might really hurt herself. So it was easy to do, but it was still super challenging. So that scenario is often quite easy, but you come all the way back down where you're just talking to someone. I was running along the Riverwalk the other day with Rachel, my partner, and there was a little, probably 6-year-old girl standing crying, and she had a bike helmet on, and people were walking past her, and I had a weight vest and baseball cap, so and I don't see this, but Rach goes, like, you look pretty scary.
Yeah.
So I knelt down next to this little girl. I was like, oh, sweetheart, are you okay, darling? Like, where's mum? Do you know where mum is? And there had been 4 or 5 men walk past and looking, like, you could see him like, oh, I better not do anything. Now, if I was on my own, I'd still do that.
Yeah.
So I go, that's the other end of vulnerability. Like, we should be helping each other, not being so scared of being judged and, oh, no, it's the wrong thing, or people will think this. I don't give a shit what people think. If I give a shit that little 5-year-old girl isn't standing crying, feeling totally alone as people walk past her, or this 14-year-old young girl isn't thinking about doing serious harm to herself because she feels alone. Like, that to me is, that should be easy, but I think most people find that challenging. And I think men and women, not just men.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, like, you were solid in, and it's not to say other people aren't, but the understanding of their integrity, like, you were solid in your integrity there. So, like, you could really lean on that because you've obviously done that work to be like, well, these are my intentions. It's to help this little girl. It's, I'm good. And so fuck all y'all, like, this is what I'm doing.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
But other people, even if they had the same integrity and intentions, if they feel, and I find this is a lot with whether or not you've done that deep dive into that inner work, right? Like, if you are wavering on how it's going to be perceived, it just means that even if that integrity and intention is genuine in there, it's still not a strong wall to like for you to lean against in that situation.
Oh, definitely, Jess. And there was a couple of women who were probably about 60, I guess, who had just stopped at the little girl when Rachel and I got to her. And you could see they were a little bit like almost trying to shepherd her away from me. And we were only there for about 30 seconds and her dad walked up
Mm.
and her mum and brother had ridden off on their bikes and she tried to catch them running and couldn't, and so got stuck in the middle, right? The beautiful little kid. And these women you could see were like, oh, come on, honey, come with. I was like, hey, hang on, she's good. And I'm like, what's going on, sweetheart? Because who knows whether she may well, if I'm coming from that really strong father type figure,
Mm.
those young, like a young girl's probably going to react to that better than to potentially a woman. Now, maybe or maybe not, where I think probably, who knows? It's all up for argument. But they were quite almost funny, and I was looking at them thinking, this is really funny. I don't get frustrated. And I was just about to say to them, hey, listen, I'm not a pedophile. I'm not trying to take this girl anywhere. I'm actually just want to help her. And
Yeah.
Dad walked in, so there was no need. And I
Yeah.
would have said that, and not in an aggressive way, but just in a, like that explanatory way to go, hey, you can take your fear about me being a pedophile and grooming this kid off the table. That's not my intention.
Yeah, it's kind of the calling it what it isn't again. That
Yeah.
piece. Yeah.
And I go, I don't blame them because we are hypersensitive, and rightly so,
Mhm.
to men with kids because of pedophiles. Now, again, if you look at the statistics of it, there's like it's a 97% or something crazy. And a good mate of mine in the Australian Federal Police runs the National Centre for Combating Child Exploitation. People they know, people that are in their lives, the offending of strangers to children is single digit percentage, like
Yeah,
less than
it's
3
people
3%.
they know, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But again, we are all very on top of that in public. But then where are we having those conversations in private? Where are
Mhm.
we actually going, hey, I'm not sure if that's something looks a bit weird with that guy and his daughter or that swim coach or like whatever.
Mm.
And it's that I read a book recently and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. And they were actually talking about exactly this. There was a swim coach in the States who was sexually abusing young men, and they were late, like tweens to early teens, I guess. And the first complaint was made 10 years prior to him being arrested. And people just couldn't believe it would happen. Their default to truth
Mm.
was, I can't actually get my head around the fact that that guy who appears like such a good guy could be doing that thing, so they discount it. And
Yeah.
again, that's the vulnerability, the conversation, the stuff that you go, we've built this culture of don't talk about secrets, don't air your dirty laundry in public, that has kids who are like 12, 13, 14-year-old men, young men, who are being sexually abused by somebody in authority in this coach, who still are too scared to speak out. And
Yeah.
you're like, that's like, that to me is what this whole leadership, emotional connection, vulnerability, go, you know what? You should be able to talk to anyone. If I'm standing next to you in the coffee line, then I would love to think that I had an energy that people pick up or whatever, where you could say to me, hey, my boyfriend's outside. He's being really abusive and I'm really scared. And I go, cool, let me help you. Help me
Yeah.
die. And it all comes down to fear and vulnerability. We're so scared of what people think. We're scared of offending people. We're scared of just all this bullshit that has us all just locked away. It's madness.
It's interesting. Oh, it's also interesting. It's just it is this you're right, it is the fear of vulnerability, but it's the fear of like how people are going to respond. So, like obviously those kids that speak up and, like you, a lot of sexual assault survivors don't speak up because they feel like they're going to get judged. Or,
Absolutely.
like maybe they were
Absolutely.
asking for it, or like,
Yeah, totally.
everything, but it doesn't have to be at that degree in anything that we talk about. It's again, like, we don't know, there's such a fear of how people will perceive us.
It's that disgusting thing. And, whether it's, criminal defense lawyers or whatever it might be, where in whatever scenario where a young woman wears a short skirt and looks very sexy and then gets attacked by some predator and they go, oh, she's asking for it. I'm like, really? Like, those people need to be taken out the back and dealt with in themselves, right? Now, I go, my daughters, touch wood, and I certainly hope is the case. No, like I've had multiple conversations with my girls over the years. And because their mum and I have a very challenging relationship, that's in the back of my mind going, I don't want that to be able to be misconstrued as inappropriate, all these things, right? But in my heart, I'm like, I love my daughters to death. I want them to know when they're pretty little, I go, if somebody touches you in your private parts, that's not okay. Often people who do that will say, if you tell your mum or dad, I will hurt you or hurt them or I will kill them. And they're like, oh, now there's a bit of shock and a little bit of mini trauma for them in that, right? But I
Yeah.
go, you know what? I would rather that than them have the trauma of, whether it is systemized and repeated sexual abuse because someone says, I'll kill your parents if you tell them. Now
Yeah.
I said to them, listen, doesn't matter whatever happens. I don't care who the person is. If somebody touches you inappropriately, you tell me and
Mhm.
we'll deal with it. You tell mum. I know mum will look after you. You tell any adult. And I go, so, and what do you reckon will happen if that happens? They go, oh, well, you'd hurt them. I said, yep, pretty much. I said, so the person who needs to be scared about being hurt isn't you. That's going to be them. And they're like, yeah, cool. So I go, now again, people go, well, that's not appropriate. You shouldn't tell your kids you'll hurt them. I go, but they're very basic animals as young kids. I go,
Yeah.
if someone's going to get hurt, it's not going to be you, it's going to be them. They go,
Do you
cool.
think, yeah, you're creating this safe container, like, and it's,
Absolutely.
you're not going into detail about how you're
Yeah,
going to hurt this person, right? Like you're just saying for their comprehension of you're not going to get hurt or swapping the words out, you're not going to get in trouble. They will. It's,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
communicate
then
nuance.
it is. And then you look like my daughter, my 15-year-old, she turned 15 a couple of months ago. I had a conversation with her late last year around sex and pornography and different things. And actually, Nick, our mutual friend, who's a police detective, was talking about some real challenges because teenage kids are watching a lot more porn. So their perception around what's normal, whatever normal is quite weird. And it's group sex and different things. And I'm like, holy shit. I don't think my daughter would be watching it, but how do I know?
Yeah.
I don't think whatever. And I'm like, I live my life in a very different way because I haven't been with them 24/7 for the last 7 years, 7.5 years. I've had to learn to influence, not dominate. And it's been such a gift because I can be dominating personality. So I said to her, I said, so hun, I want to talk to you about sex and this. And we ran through the details of it. And I said, you comfortable talk to me? She goes, oh yeah, yeah, dad, no dramas. I'm like, right. And then I said, this and this isn't this, your body's your body, you make your choices, but I'd love you to talk to me so you can be more informed. And if a boy says, if you don't do that, you don't love me, I go, boys are morons from 15 till about 50. So make sure you talk to me, blah, 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 ha, ha, ha. She thinks it's all funny. And I said to her, so sweetheart, you can always talk to me about anything. And she goes, oh, yeah, I know that, Dad. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I said, how do you know that? She goes, well, you've always got her back. I know that. I'll talk to you about anything. And I got quite teary. And she goes, as I do often, and she goes, oh my God, you're a freak. Stop crying. What's wrong with you? So she was more uncomfortable and jokingly about about me getting upset because of our connection. I was so happy than talking about sex. And we've talked about periods and all sorts, because I go, why wouldn't you? And I have other men, other fathers who go, oh, I don't talk about that shit. Their mum talks about that. I'm like, mate,
Ah,
this is 2020, you moron. It's not 1950. Like, we need to grow up
yeah.
like crazy.
I saw a funny meme the other day, actually. It was something about like guys that have to go buy like tampons or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's like, dude, no one thinks that it's for you. Like,
Yeah, that's
fine.
right. Yeah, and I was the same, right? When I was a young guy in my 20s, I remember a partner I had at the time said, hey, can you get me tampons from the shop? And I was like, oh my God, like I was freaking out. Now I'm like, you are such a moron.
Yeah.
And it's, that was in the 1990s. So I guess I'm using that as an excuse, but it's no excuse. But I think now, like I couldn't give a rat's ass. And it's whether it's that the young girl is very much dark like a daughter to me. When she was in labour, and long story, I was at her house and she's on all fours in labour and I'm rubbing her back. I'm like, you're right, hon, yep. And like the stuff that her and I have talked about and my daughters and other women that I'm close to, I go, well, why is that weird? Like, why do we look at periods, for instance, as this one bodily function that's so taboo and so weird? And I go, but I said to the girls, I said, so your period's sort of like going do a poo or whatever. I said, it's your body's just cleansing itself, same thing. And they're like, yeah. Now, we make, as parents or society or whoever, if I wasn't really open and comfortable with that stuff with my daughters, then I'm building the first brick in the wall of our connection, our vulnerability. And then when we get to bigger issues, like whether it is drugs or sexual assault or whatever, they're not going to talk to me because they don't have that foundation of trust. And that's leadership is like that. Business, relationships, friendships, everything is the same. If you don't have any trust, you don't have any connection, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple.
But you know what I love is that you started the conversation with her with, are you comfortable talking to me about this?
Absolutely.
Like, because you gave her an option, you sort of created that safe container. And I think that's the missing piece of a lot of our communication in general, whether it's with
Yeah.
kids or whoever it is, like, is actually just asking, saying, hey, are you comfortable talking to me about this? Or do you mind if we talk about this? Or are you okay if I just share this thing about this over here? But it's giving
Absolutely.
them the opt-in almost, and then they can realize,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, actually, or actually, no, not right now, or whatever it
I
is.
said, I said to her, I was like, babe, are you good, hun, to talk about sex? She goes, yeah. And I said, listen, let's be really honest. I'm not sure what I was 49, a 49-year-old dad talking to a 14-year-old daughter about sex is appropriate. I'm actually not sure whether what I'm going to talk to you about is going too far or not. I said, but hun, at the end of the day, I would rather risk it going too far and someone thinking that's not okay than not going far enough and you not having the information you need to make informed choices for you, your safety, your life, stuff that can be quite emotionally impactful. And she's like, no, I'm all good. And
Do you
then,
think that there is that fear in, like, because I like that concept of, again, of sort of saying like, oh, I feel nervous to bring this up because of,
yeah, absolutely.
is there a fear, or just people aren't thinking of that in their communication, or is it?
Well, I just think if we have the fear, Jess, I think it's this simple. I used to have the fear and then not have the conversation because I would see that as a red flag to go,
Yeah.
that's a bad thing. But these days I'll have the fear and say, listen, I don't know if I'm overstepping the mark. I don't know if this is wrong. And I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring with clients and men, women, like all sorts of people. And some of the things we talk about are pretty, like, are super personal. And the way that I go at them sometimes is really hard. And I won't give you details because I'll sound really bad and I can't give enough context. But there was a particular woman that I spoke to recently in a really tough situation, very well educated, amazing woman. And I was used some extremely harsh language with her in a particular conversation to snap her out of her,
Yeah.
like out of her dogged determination to hold on to this one thing. And when I used this particular bit of language with her, she had this. We were in a cafe, we were having lunch. I'm saying, you're not listening, and we'd had 50 minutes. I go, you're not fucking listening. It's this thing, this thing. She goes, no, you don't get it. It's this and this. And I knew I was right through my experience, or I certainly felt I was right anyway. And I said to her, listen, when I used this particular bit of language, she just was like, her jaw hit the floor, her eyes widened up. She goes, did you just say what I thought you said? I said, yep, 100%. And she goes, oh my God, no one's ever said that. I said, are you offended? She goes, I really want to be, but you're just such a good person. I can't be. And I was like, because I'm delivering it with love and care to you, because I want you to listen. Are you going to listen? She goes, yep. And then that's been our little sort of running joke. Now, I did that because I was so invested in getting the best outcome for her. There was so much fear. I was like, oh, is this going to go really bad? Is this going to go really pear-shaped? But I just, short of reaching over and slapping her like the old style movie to snap her out of her mindset, which obviously is inappropriate, I'm like, well, I'm willing to risk it. And I'm willing to risk it with anybody I deal with, professionally, in my life, my friendships, my family, whatever, because I would rather push that conversation too deep or too far or then pull up short. And 99% of people, we pull up short. That's why people on their deathbed are always have regrets about not being connected, not saying what they should say, all of these things. And my big thing in my life, I had this conversation with someone 2 days ago. I said, if I died today, this minute, right now, and I've spoken to my daughters twice in 8 weeks, if I died today, they know I love them more than anything. There's no doubt in their mind. My partner the same. My family, everybody in my life knows how I feel about them because I tell them. So I have no regret. I have no fear. I don't want to die tomorrow. I don't want to die today. But if I did, I'm like, cool. People know that I love them. They
Yeah.
know how much they mean to me. I'm not leaving that unsaid because I go, how do you know this isn't the last minute? And what are you waiting for? The only reason we don't say it is the fear of vulnerability, judgment. Like, what are you terrified about? That you're going to have a really good relationship? Like, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Like, that's one thing where I'm just like, I'd rather just say the thing, and
Yeah.
rather than wondering, like, literally, like, wondering what if, like, what if I,
Yeah.
like, what if I had said that, or, without feeling like I've left anything unsaid. I feel like that's a big fear of mine now, and that was over time. And I think learning to communicate and express yourself it takes time, because you have to work through all those fears, right? And I've had a lot of them before, like in the past, and they still crop up every now and then and surprise
Sure.
me. I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's that determination of like, nothing, I can't leave anything unsaid anymore. If I feel something, or if I think something, like whatever it is, I need to, like, I'll choose the delivery
Sure, totally.
for sure, like, absolutely, and use tact and respect and kindness and compassion there. But like, if it's something that's so important to me, it's a thing that just it needs to
Definitely.
come out, like, because otherwise, what are we doing? But
And that's it. And to me, that's funny when you talk about fears, right? Because I've got my goddaughter's 2.5 years old, and beautiful. Ava is her name, just a gorgeous kid. And she, as I've watched her grow and be so emotionally connected to her mum and dad and whatever, you look at her now, and she's starting to develop a little bit of shyness and a little bit of things. She's a really funny kid, and her mum and dad are so loving to her. It's awesome. But when she was born as a baby, she had no fear of what people thought.
mm,
Now she's 2.5, and I'm looking at it, and I was talking to mum, I go, just amazing. I go, where do they pick it up from?
yeah,
Obviously, our behaviour, and her mum and dad are both very emotionally aware, and mum, and both of them, especially mum, does a lot of personal development stuff, and she came from a real DV background, and she's a ambassador for the Alison Baden Clay Foundation, just an amazing young woman.
yeah,
And so her and I talking about it, go, isn't it funny? So Ava's like, Bless is her middle name. So we call her Bless. I'm like, Bless, come here, babe, give me a hug. And she's like, looks all shy at me. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Or where does that come from?
mm,
But somewhere she goes to daycare and interacts with other people and whatever. He goes, somewhere she's picking that up as a behavior,
yeah,
because kids aren't born with fear. Like literally, they have no fear. That's why you got to put a gate across the top of the stairs.
yeah,
That's why you can't let them walk out on the street. Like they literally have no fear of anything, and we just program them.
mm,
And unfortunately, and you'll never avoid that, but unfortunately, we don't, back to our leadership thing, we don't lead unconditionally. We don't lead and give them the example of no fear. We actually lead by going out there in the world. We pretend to be one person in here behind closed doors, then I'm someone else.
yeah,
And I'm like, we should really be that best version of us in our homes, and be the shit person out there. Like we've got it back to front. Best you're not either. But the thing that brings a real level of peace and calm for me around vulnerability and all that these days is I am the same guy everywhere.
mm,
If it's my partner Rach, who I love to death, if it's my daughters, if it's someone I've just met on the street, if it's the guy or girl who's making my coffee at a coffee shop, I'm the same guy. I'm still loving, connected. Hi, how you going? I'm still got inappropriate humor. I still think I'm hilarious and most people don't. There's all those sort of things, right? And I go, but that I just am who I am. As you can see in this interview, I love to talk about this stuff. And,
I could
I get,
go hours. It's just,
yeah,
yeah,
but I get people's like the girls who are like daughters to me, Rach, my partner, go, oh my God, you talk so much. And I go, yeah. And I used to take that so negatively. Now I'm like, yeah, that just
yeah.
is who I am.
It's a quality for sure. Like, again, it's leading by example. You're giving other people permission to express themselves and to share what they think, or to learn and all of that. So it's super important.
And
I do have two more questions, and I
go
feel
for
like
it.
we covered them a lot, but just if you could summarize, like, if you
Sure.
could summarize it in like a single kind of sentence or
Yep.
short summaries, the first question's a two-parter, so it's 2.5 questions. Where do you feel like you get communication and leadership and vulnerability really right, and where do you feel like there's room for improvement?
That's a really good question. I think I get it. I think I get it really right. Actually, yeah. So I think I get it really right with my clients and people I work with professionally. So my mentoring clients, keynotes, workshops, I think I get it really right.
Mm-hmm.
Where I can use improvement is the closer the person is to me, the more natural barriers I have. And and thanks for that, because I've never actually made that,
There you go.
that delineation, right? So I go, my daughters, yeah, even probably my daughters, but there's more unconditional, because
Mm.
I see that as not as a one-way communication, but my responsibility is to lead. They don't really have a
Yeah,
responsibility.
an obligation.
No, there's no obligation from them. I chose to be their dad. With my partner, with Rach and I, definitely, and we work often on that. And even recently in our relationship, we got to the point of going, do we stay in this or do we not? Because there was 90% of it was amazing, but there was a couple of things that we had different opinions on, and we spent a lot of time apart thinking about it and come together and worked it out together, and now it's awesome. So I think in the summary is I'm great if you are a little distance from me. I need improvement if you're the closer you get to me.
Yeah, because it might require a little more vulnerability, right?
Absolutely.
As people are, the
Yeah.
more we like want, but also, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And the last question, and again, I feel like we've touched on a lot of like what the answer could be anyway. But in summary, where do you feel like there is room for improvement in, let's say, your industry? Because we've spoken about the world, but
Sure.
like in your industry. So whichever industry you want to pick from
Sure.
and share about. But yeah.
I'd like, whether it's police, military, corporate, wherever, it's all the same. The massive area for improvement is twofold. One, for leaders to understand nobody expects them to be perfect, so therefore they can be more emotionally connected and make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly is for the staff, for want of a better term, but the people who are being led, to understand that their leaders have fear, doubt, insecurity the same as they do. So everybody's sort of being more open and vulnerable to go, we can all make mistakes and no one's going to die.
Mm.
Because there's a real fear, I think, of leaders to go, oh, if I make a mistake, then people judge me or whatever. It's much easier to forgive a mistake than to accept inaction or poor action.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it.
Mm.
Oh my God, that was just the best conversation. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time. I loved every moment of that, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of your thoughts and perspectives and stories and wisdom around all of these things, and for bringing vulnerability explicitly into the mix, because that's an element that is definitely a role in, I feel like, in communication and leadership. So thanks so much for joining me today,
You're
Shaun.
so welcome, Jess. I absolutely loved it. Thank you.